again, it's Brian Lewis here to talk to you about your digital marketing. In our last segment, we talked about the way to make sure that your website is the most effective marketing tool is through testing. But we also talked about that if you have a small amount of traffic and conversions to your site, that the problem may be it's going to take too long to get those results back. So what are some alternatives if you do have a site that doesn't get a lot of visitors, but you want to be able to find out how can I tweak that site and make it most effective? Well, there's two things we want to consider. One is test ideation. In other words, how to decide what it is we want to test. And normally we go to our analytics as a good source of information for that. But if you don't have a lot of traffic, then there may not be information there. So what are some other alternatives besides your web analytics to come up with ideas on what to test? Well, there's a whole slew of tools out there that can be very helpful. One tool is called a heat map. And a heat map is going to show you how your visitors are behaving on a particular page. It's going to show you what they're clicking on. It's going to show you how far down the page they're scrolling. It's going to show you mouse movement, which there's a general correlation between where mouse is moved and where people are reading on the page. So you can get a sense for how people are interacting on that page, and maybe they're not interacting the way that supports your conversion goals. So that would give you an idea of what to test. You could also do what's known as user testing. And there's user testing platforms out there. Usertesting.com is one where you can recruit testers to go ahead. You give them, actually what you do is you want to make sure you set them up with the proper context first. So you want to make sure that they understand the role they're playing, and then you give them a very specific task. And then they'll record that, and there's audio and there's video, and you can from that assess what are some things that maybe they kind of stumbled with that maybe we want to test changing. And maybe that's either the user interface, or maybe it's the messaging, or maybe the text on the call to action button. They kind of stumbled over that. So that's another good place to look. You may want to consider doing exit surveys when someone leaves your site, or it doesn't even have to be an exit survey. It could be when someone's on a page for a particular length of time that you want to pop up a survey and ask them questions about their visit experience. And make that very specific. In other words, let's say you're e-commerce. If they're on a product detail page and they've been on that product detail page for a while, ask them questions related to that page, which would be different than if, let's say, they're on your home page for a while. So you want to make sure that it's very relevant to whatever that particular visit experience is. So those are some ideas that if you don't have enough data in your analytics to come up with test ideation, test hypotheses, other places you can go. The other problem that we need to solve when you have low traffic and conversions is how are we going to do this testing? Because Brian, you mentioned in the previous segment that the best way to do it is to send traffic to the new page and send traffic to the existing page and then compare the results. But we can't do that, right? Because we don't have enough traffic. So there's a couple things you can do. One is sequential testing. And sequential testing is we've been sending traffic to our existing page, right? And we're measuring that. Now let's put up the new page and let's measure that. Now it's not as scientific because they're two different time periods versus A/B split testing, which is the same time period. But it's still better than doing nothing at all, as long as those time periods don't really start to get extended out long. Another thing you can do is think about buying traffic. Now, this is going to be kind of expensive, but again, we're trying to get more and more traffic to our site so we can do an effective test. Some ideas for buying traffic could be PPC, display advertising, social media, and again, it does cost money, but you actually may stumble on a profitable traffic source for you that you didn't even try before. Also think about micro conversions. A lot of companies are very focused on, well, I want that form to be filled out, or I want the phone to be picked up and called, or I want the add to cart button, or actually someone to order something. But think about maybe a micro conversion, because you're going to have a lot more of micro conversions. A micro conversion might be visiting the product detail page. You're going to have a lot more of those, and you're going to have people who actually order, so you'll be able to build up those traffic statistics a lot more. And then finally, another thing that you can do for testing ideas is do qualitative testing. In other words, you have your existing page, you have your test page, recruit some user testers. And again, set them up with the proper context so they understand their role and who they're playing as the visitor on that page, and then what is specifically they're supposed to do. Look at what they're saying, see how they're interacting, and that also will tell you up front probably which page is going to be the better performer for you. So that's it for you guys for the low traffic sites. It's been great talking to you. Till next time, this is Brian Lewis.